Folks, Pete Buttigieg, what the heck is wrong with this guy? You know, I know millennials, they don't place roots down, right? Isn't that the thing about millennials? They're very mobile.
Rootless cosmopolitans.
They're rootless, right? Well, Pete Buttigieg is showing us how easy it is to move through stuff. When was this video from? Do we know? This is from January. Do you remember January? What's that? February. Sorry, February. Do you remember February? That was a long time ago, folks. February. That was, oh gosh, 8 whole months ago. Let's look and see how far Pete Buttigieg has moved. Again, he's a millennial. Here he is on Morning Joe talking to some dude on Morning Joe.
Look, I think what we have to decide is, are we going to keep being defined by where these fence posts are, or are we going to do what the right very successfully did over the last 40 years and redefine them? Medicare for All is a great example. Again, you know, ACA, which was a conservative proposal, came to be caricatured as left-wing by a very disciplined right-wing message machine, right? What is Medicare for All? It's a compromise. I mean, in the UK, you got national health care. That would be the left-wing, the true left-wing position. The true right-wing position is free for all corporate. And the compromise position is a single-payer system where you have private doctors but a public payer. We've got to stop allowing the right to move the goalposts and characterize the entire center of the debate.
Respectfully, it's not.
Okay, so there he is, Pete Buttigieg in February, saying the center of the debate is actually Medicare for All. And we've got to stop allowing the right to move the goalposts, right? I mean, that's what we've got to do. But ladies and gentlemen, that was all the way back in February. That's not where we are today, right, Pete?
Talk about that moment that we just played in our intro where you went at it with Senator Elizabeth Warren about her Medicare for All plan, and you wanted a simple yes or no answer of will she raise taxes. And what she ended up saying time and again was Americans' household costs will come down with her plan. What does it matter to you what bucket it comes out of?
Well, not only is it important to have yes or no answers to yes or no questions at a time when people are so frustrated with Washington speak, but also there's still been no explanation for a multi-trillion-dollar hole in this plan. I have a lot of respect for Senator Warren, but last night she was more specific and forthcoming about the number of selfies she's taken than about how this plan is going to be funded. And that's a real problem, especially when there's a better way to deliver health care coverage to everybody. Look, what most Americans want is to have an opportunity to walk away from their private plan, to have that, what I call Medicare for all who want it alternative, but also to be able to keep their private plan if they would prefer. And I think that's the right answer, especially when you do the math and realize it's also an answer that is paid for, unlike the Medicare for All, whether you want it or not plans that still have this giant question mark over how it's supposed to work.
You know, one of the things I love about juxtaposing those two clips is you hear him back in February where he wasn't sure what lane he was going to run in, and he was just maybe speaking from actual just like, you know, policy knowledge. And like, look, let's be honest. Medicare for All is the down the road, center, middle, obvious thing. And we shouldn't allow the right wing to use their talking points to convince us of otherwise. And then he learns from himself like he's got artificial intelligence almost, because by October, he's actually spouting some of those right-wing talking points. But let's see if we can't get this, his algorithm to relearn why he knew back in February.
Hey, it was a different time.
The Medicare for All plan is a better plan with the help of Dr. Don Berwick, the former Medicare administrator, who's going to explain why a public option, a Medicare for those who want it, won't work. This is simple. And frankly, I think that Bernie or Warren should have delivered this message. They both had opportunities to do it, and they didn't do it. They need to do this. They need to start pointing out that the plans that Pete Buttigieg and others are presenting is basically unicorn plans. They will not work as they're talking to them about this. They can be cheap as all hell if they want, but they won't work. And here's Don Berwick to explain why.
I'm a little worried about the public option for a kind of technical reason. Insurance companies want to provide insurance to people that don't need it. That's how they make money. And so anything that can be done to game risk so that
public option would be used by all the people who really need the insurance the most.
And if I were insurance companies would then try to find ways to have people who really need care go to the public option, which would enrich, it'd be a good business case for them, and that's not good for the country.
It's not good for the country because then it becomes even more expensive. That's the other half of that equation. When the sicker people, the people who need the insurance, go into the public option, it becomes more expensive because you don't have as many people paying in. You don't have the people who don't use it. 80% of our medical costs are borne by 20% of the people. You just don't know which 20% they are until they get sick. And then when you do, if they all move to the public option and the healthy people are all in the private option, then instead of people's payments into an insurance fund paying for the sick people, it goes to shareholders and is frankly inflated for how many people actually use it in that private sector. And then, as a public sector standpoint, we have to pay more because essentially those shareholders, those CEOs, those board of directors, they're taking the money that would make the system work for everybody. It's going in their pocket instead of being spread around to people who need it for health insurance, to pay for health care. And so it's time for Bernie and Warren to shift the debate. Instead of addressing like, how are you going to pay for it? Because we know how you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it with taxes, and it's going to be a net savings to people in terms of cost. But then the next step is to say, your plan doesn't work because of the basic functioning of insurance. In fact, insurance companies used to be in favor of a Medicare expansion or buy-in at age 55. And why? Because they calculated that they could make more money by offloading people from age 55 to 65. Because statistically speaking, you'll probably have people with more ailments in that age group than you will in younger ages, or to the extent that they have in younger ages, you already see them before they before they come for your insurance. You can price it better. And that will be offloaded to the public sector. But then they didn't need to do that with the ACA because they got all the subsidies from the government to sustain their business. And that's why they changed their mind on that. And that's why Joe Lieberman changed his mind on that back when the ACA fight was happening. But the bottom line is the public option, it just simply does not work. It might work in the context of the exchanges, insofar as you're talking about a limited pool of people defined by people who don't qualify for other insurance, like at work. But we know what the point of having employer-based insurance is. It is to control their workforce. That's why they anticipated there was a surprise in the way that the exchanges worked within the context of society. There was an assumption that companies would stop offering health insurance and say to their employer and employees, like, look, I'll give you a small subsidy. You go buy it in the exchange. Because that way I don't have to deal with any of this mess. But it didn't happen nearly to the extent that was projected. And it's because it wasn't just about cost to the companies. It was about control over their employees. And you want to empower labor, one of the ways you do it, a big way, is by not making them beholden to management to make sure that if their kids get sick, they're not going to be indigent.
Yeah, and then once the public option is weighed down and bloated and crashes because there is still a private market, they can point to that and say, oh, look, the public option doesn't work.
The worst part about it, it's not even the existence, in my mind, it's not even the existence of the private market. It's that you're not making everyone pay into the public one. That is the problem. You need to have everybody pay their premiums to the government to make the government insurance work. Those premiums, I mean, they're a tax, but it's all a tax. It's just one's a private tax, one's a public tax.
So paying premiums feels like a tax.
It's like the concept of tax is a little bit fluid. They called the penalty to the ACA a tax. It's not. It was a penalty. But at the end, I got a buddy, lawyer Matthew, actually. I was introduced to this notion. He would give his kid, his kid wanted like an orange juice. He brings the orange juice over and he takes a big sip. And the kid is like, what are you doing? Why are you drinking that? He goes, it's tax. It's a little tax. Or, a bite out of his ice cream cone, whatever it is. Exactly.
That's cool. That's good parenting.
Tax can mean a bunch of different things.
Is it safe to assume that all of the people fighting against Medicare for All and for plans that are not going to work understand this?
It is, we know that Pete Buttigieg understood it in February. Now, maybe he suffered some type of head trauma and forgot it by October, but he knows. He knows. Maybe it's the political cowardice that is a function of, I just don't know we can sell this to the American public. It's conceivable that's one thing. Like, Adam Green would come on the show years ago and say, one of the things that they were trying to do at the PCCC was to go in and show candidates that they can take these positions and show them polling that suggests that there's a lot of support for them out there. And candidates didn't actually know this. I mean, I think you can never underestimate ignorance as an explanation for a lot of stuff. But I imagine Pete Buttigieg understands this. I mean, he was a McKinsey, consultant.
He's so smart.
All right, here is a...